from Parker Dewey. Really excited to be here with our friends from Barry University talking about what's a very, very exciting program they're spearheading. I'll let the folks from Barry say hello and kick us off, and then we'll dive into it.
Good morning. My name is Jeanette Melchiori. I'm the Associate Director for Career and Strategic Partnership. We are excited to launch with this Micro-Internship with Parker Dewey, and we hope you enjoy this session.
I'm just going to chime in as well. Hi, I'm Jadisha Williams. I serve as the Director for Career and Experiential Learning. We're really appreciative of many of you being on here today, and especially exploring micro-internships in terms of how they could further support our students through the Parker Dewey platform, which is really fantastic because there's a few different funding supports in this current academic year that they'll share as well, specifically the DeLuca Fund as well. So with that being said, we know this is a really great opportunity, not just connecting to our students, but also to our employers. So we really hope that you all find value in this and that you also leverage this as well for our student body. Thanks and appreciate it. I'll pass it off to you, Jeff.
Thanks so much, but you stole my thunder. You stole my thunder. No, all seriousness, I am so excited to be here. The folks at Barry are absolutely incredible. And it's just such a great program. What a great way for the employers here today, or who are going to be watching the recording, to sort of get to know the amazing Barry students, whether they're first or second year, starting to build a relationship, or those who are actively looking for summer internships and full-time roles. Couple of housekeeping notes, and then we'll get into the agenda. First, this session is being recorded. We will share the recording and slides afterwards. Second, if you have questions along the way, I have the chat open. Feel free to use the chat with any questions or comments. I'm usually pretty good at keeping an eye over there for a second, in addition to my screen, to try to answer them as we go through. So for today's agenda, we're going to keep this under 30 minutes. We'll give you a quick overview of what's going on in the early career space. We'll talk about what a micro-internship is. We're going to talk about actionable strategies that you can apply right now, whether you're feeling in the middle of campus recruiting, at career fairs, hosting interviews, or whether you haven't begun yet. Your process is more delayed until the spring. We're going to give you things that you can be doing right now. And as the Barry folks stole my thunder, we're going to talk about a funded program where you can see all of this and see the impact with no cost through the very, very generous support of the DeLuca Foundation. As I said, we'll have time for Q&A. So with that, we'll jump into it. As very, very quick background, Parker Dewey is a 10-year-old organization focused exclusively on supporting employers, universities, and students in those college to career transitions. We've done it by creating a platform that helps employers identify, engage, build relationships with individuals who can be those future summer interns or full-time hires. This is not some newfangled thing. As I said, we've been doing this over a decade with organizations ranging from one-person startups to Fortune 100 and everything in between. So jumping into the meat of this, we all know there are real challenges right now on the early career side. Recruiting side. Cost per hire continues to increase. According to the latest National Association of Colleges and Employers survey, it's north of $6,000 for every hire. And that does not factor into the fact that about 50% of college students leave their first job within the first year. And sometimes it's because it's not the right fit that the employer realizes, or the student realizes, or recent grad, I should say, realizes it's not the right fit. It could be any number of reasons. We also hear directly from the students that 70% of them don't feel like the recruiting process lets them effectively demonstrate their skills. Again, consistent with what we're hearing from employers. We're going to show you how you can engage and assess candidates earlier in the process before making that significant investment. So imagine, before you set foot at Barry, having students who are engaged and interested and excited about learning about your organization. When you're on campus, whether it's at a career fair or a tabling event or presenting in the class, being able to have meaningful discussions with those students. Discussions that go beyond, here's my resume and elevator pitch, or sharing what they can be reading on the website. Or after those visits, being able to have those students continue to stay engaged with you. whether again, it's a first or second year student who's actively in that career exploration phase, or maybe a junior, senior, recent grad for that last minute need you have. Being able to have insights on if they're actually interested in your role and insights on their skills earlier in the process. And when we talk skills, we're not just talking, can they use Excel? Can they do Power BI? We're also talking those core skills that we know make a huge difference in a great hire: communication, problem solving, attention to detail, but the skills that are often most difficult to assess from a resume or even an interview. And for those of you that can't be on campus this year, that's okay. How can you reach and engage those students? They could be students from Florida who go to school there, but they could also be students from other parts of the country who want to return home. So if you're an organization in Atlanta or New York or Boston or Texas or Louisiana, what a great way to reach those students, even again, if you can't be on campus. This isn't something you need to imagine. This is experiential recruiting, what Parker Dewey does. It's the intersection of employer branding and skills-based hiring. So when I talk employer branding, I'm not talking what kind of swag you have at the career fair, or even how well known your organization is. Companies like Nike think about employer branding. Everyone knows Nike, but students may not realize Nike has roles in data analytics or AI or HR technology. And think about those thousands of other companies, whether they're small businesses or manufacturing firms or others, that just aren't well known by students. This is what employer branding is. It's being able to reach and engage those students and drive authentic interest in your organization as an employer. The other side of it is skills-based hiring. This has been a very hot topic for years. It's how we hire experienced professionals, not based upon their major or GPA, but by looking at their actual skills. Now, when we hire experienced professionals, we're able to do it from past professional experiences they've had. Experiential recruiting is applying that same concept at the early career side, being able to get their insights on their skills beyond the academic pedigree. It's also about mutually assessing fit. Do I, as the student, feel like I have the right skills for that role? And aligning with the strategic goals of the organization. The way we do this all is with micro-internships. So if we were together, I'd ask for a show of hands, how many of you know what a micro-internship is? But since we're not together live, and since my Zoom skills are subpar, I can't figure out how to do it on the site, I'll spend about a minute sharing the way we define micro-internships. Micro-internships are short-term paid professional projects that are completed by college students. They don't replace summer internships or apprenticeships or co-ops. Don't replace full-time roles. Micro-internships are a recruiting tool. The same way that you go to the career fair, host a tabling event, post a job on a job board. That's what micro-internships are. They're a way to engage, assess, and ultimately hire individuals. The projects themselves are very, very short-term. Think about tasks that would require a student to spend 10, 15, 20 hours to do. But they're also tasks that don't require any onboarding or you to share any info. They're tasks, as I'll show you, where students are using public information. Sorry, my Zoom cut out for a second. Can you hear me okay again?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Great, I am so sorry. Can we blame it on Amazon East again?
Sure.
Sorry about that. So the micro-internships, as I was saying, are short-term projects. They don't require companies to share any data, any information, access to any systems. These are projects students can do on their own, and they can be done year-round. As one of the college students described it, think about a micro-internship like a job date, where the summer internship or apprenticeship or co-op is like getting engaged. The full-time role is getting married. One other thing I will note is they are highly accessible for any organization. The micro-interns are not your employees, they're not your contractors, so you don't have to worry about the HR burdens. They're on Parker Dewey's books. In addition, to the extent you're working with an amazing micro intern who you do want to bring in to your recruiting process for a summer internship or full-time role or anything else, we're not a staffing firm, so there's no like cost or fee associated with it. As I said before, doesn't require access to any of your data or systems. Students are doing this independently. So as opposed to it just being hypothetical, I'll show you some examples. One of the things Parker Dewey does is we take job descriptions for entry-level full-time roles or summer internships, and we actually craft projects that align. So as you can see on the left, this is a company that was hiring for a data marketer role. You can see the job description on the left. What Parker Dewey did was we said, hey, a perfect project might be a competitive campaign analysis. We want a student to research this kind of stuff, again, using public info and put together a report. Again, what the company was able to do was engage that student who might not have been aware of that brand or thinking about that role, but also see the student's skills, both, again, the technical skills around doing market research, but also other things like creative thinking and presentation. We do this for roles that might be on a manufacturing floor. Again, a micro internship is not going to give a student access to a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment, but you may have a student research best practices. Again, understanding the technical skills, but also those core skills. Or in coding, again, you're not going to give access to your core code base or the system your company runs on, but let's have a student research the user experience and compare and contrast. Again, one of the things that comes out of this is every step along the way, you are getting insights into a prospective candidate's skills. When they apply, are they a self-starter? Do they have attention to detail? As they're completing the project, how do they communicate? Are they turning in the work on time? And then from the final work product they submit, you're able to see things like problem solving or intellectual curiosity. And all of this plugs into what you do, so it doesn't add to your workload. So one of the questions we always get is, why do students do this? Well, 95% of college students say this is how they want to be recruited. So Parker Dewey doesn't allow colleges or universities, even our great partners like Barry, to make it a requirement. We want students here because they want to be here. And with 95% of students saying this is how they want to be recruited, they are raising their hand. Maybe it's a freshman or sophomore saying, I'm interested in exploring different industries, different roles as I'm thinking about my major. It might be a junior or senior who thinks they know what they want to do, but they want to dive in. Or your organization is the one they really want to get into. Again, great opportunities wherever you are in the funnel. And that's important because you can use this throughout the recruiting process. As I alluded to, we are in busy season right now for a lot of campus recruiting teams. Before they're showing up at the career fair or the info session, we're seeing how they're using micro internships to drive interest from students. It's a lot more interesting to give them an opportunity to work on a real project than just sharing a job description. We're seeing how they're using it after those campus visits to keep students engaged. We're also seeing how they use it to evaluate candidates, and if you can't visit campus, to still get to know them. So as we go into the next part of the presentation, I'll actually share 4 very, very specific examples of how companies did just that. Again, feel free to use the chat if you have questions along the way. Hopefully my Zoom won't cut out again, but let's jump into this. The first example is a leading hospital system that was facing 2 very distinct challenges. One, there was massive competition for roles within allied health, think X-ray technician and the like. Shortage of students who were studying those areas. So this system was trying to figure out, how do we build the relationships and differentiate? The second second challenge they had was, as a hospital system, a lot of students weren't thinking about them for roles in marketing or sales or HR or finance or strategy. They had preconceived notions. So this system was saying, how do we also engage those students to drive interest? So before visiting campus, they posted some of these micro internships, again, both tied to the allied health roles, but also tied to those other departments. Here's what happens. Before setting foot on campus, they had a pool of students who were excited to visit their booth, excited to come to their table or info session, not just the allied health students, but those studying other majors. The projects also provide a differentiator. again, not just getting them to the booth, but instead of rehashing what was on the website or again, collecting the resume and hearing the resume pitch, but discussing the real project opportunities this company had. This company also had insights on the students' skills up front, so they can make sure to invite certain students to the events or to after the event dinners. I think this company did. Students who may have had specific skills or geographic ties that align to their needs, and to get real insights beforehand, which is pretty incredible. Now, while this organization was focused on before the campus visits, the same playbook works even if you can't be there, which is again really, really important, especially this year. What about after the event? This organization was having great students show up and expressed interest, but wanted to figure out how do we keep them warm, either the juniors or seniors, up until that period that they were going to be on campus interviewing, or the first or second year students that they wanted to keep engaged. In both cases, we know students aren't responding to the generic emails, and we know they don't really have interest in yet another webinar. So what this organization did, a global medical device companies, they took a different approach. They focused initially on high volume sales roles, where they were hiring tens or hundreds of students every year. It was a role that was really, really hard for them to fill, as they wanted students with specific geographic ties, who also had backgrounds in mechanical engineering, and ideally student athletes. So when these students were showing up to the booth, this organization did not want to lose them. So what we did was we crafted business development auditions. They were essentially where students would go and research a product and put together a presentation. It was crafted to both keep the students engaged, but also to help hiring managers assess the skills. So after the event, the students were able to participate. This was the result. Not only was it a success with all of the traditional metrics, whether it was email open rates or click-through or participation, they also saw a huge improvement in the metrics that actually matter. They were able to keep the students engaged and very quickly determine who was the best fit, not based upon, again, GPA or major, but based upon their actual work. So they could focus on these candidates. The hiring managers love that. As a result of this, for this first class of business development reps that they tested it with, 100% of them are still at the company a year and a half later. The second class is still in the same place. And by the way, one of those students actually got an Employee of the Year award. So for a role where first year attrition is usually 70 to 80%, again, 50% overall for first year out of college, but within business development, much higher, they had 100% retention. And as I said, the hiring managers were really happy. In the hiring managers' words, they didn't waste time interviewing the wrong folks. And when they hired, they had confidence it was the right fit, which we'll talk about in the next example. So this organization had a huge challenge recruiting for the corporate HR roles. It had an incredible brand as a national fitness chain, but what they were finding is most of the applicants they were getting were really interested in roles at their franchises versus corporate. So they had stacks of resumes and were spending way too many hours flipping through. So what they did was they actually had hiring managers share small tasks that would come up throughout the year, articles that needed to be written, job specs that needed to be updated. And like the first example, it provided this always-on pool of candidates. Hiring managers appreciated the support. At the same time, the campus recruiting team was building a pipeline. In fact, one of the cases was an L&D team. They were looking for best practices for new hire onboarding. They selected two different students to do the project. One was an HR major with a 3.9 GPA from a highly selective school. The other was a liberal arts student from a less prestigious school whose GPA wasn't as high, but they were kind of intrigued by her. So they gave both of them the assignment. Both students did the project, and I'm sure you can guess where my story is going to go. The HR major is the example on the top. There's some good content in there, but there's also some typos and grammatical errors, things that would have been probably pretty hard to see from an interview, certainly from a resume. The other student demonstrated not just her ability to understand the technical HR skills, but also the problem solving and communication. And one thing that also shouldn't be ignored is empathy. Just looking at the deliverable, even ignoring the content itself, you can see how the second student, the one at the bottom, could empathize with the hiring manager and how that student actually presented the work. Fast forward, the student at the bottom got hired for a summer internship and then a full-time role with that organization. The hiring manager's comment was, this is probably not even someone we would have interviewed based upon her resume, but holy cow, she's amazing. Here's the last example. It's about data, whether or not you can be on campus, data to help you guide your decisions, but also data to demonstrate internally how effective your program is. This is so important right now with early career hiring under attack. This global Fortune 500 company had a small campus recruiting effort that they were not only trying to defend internally, but they wanted to scale it. So what they did was they focused on some very specific strategic goals. So for example, their headquarters were in DC, but they had offices in a bunch of other locations that were growing that they needed to fill. They also wanted to focus on specific community initiatives like gender equity in STEM. So like the other examples, we crafted a project that aligned to some of these roles and these locations. And what was different is this organization started off by engaging its ERG to participate. Here's what happened. First, they were able to reach the right candidates. Again, not just for the DC headquarters, but the students with ties to their locations like Rockford, Illinois, or Texarkana, or Holland, Michigan. They could defend the cost internally. They were able to show the cost per school, as they allowed us to share here. Internally, they also shared the internal cost per hire. They asked us not to share it, but we are allowed to share that it was a 70% plus cost savings on every hire, not to mention the retention numbers. And also, as I mentioned, this started with one of their ERGs. They saw immediate results, both in driving more equity in the candidate pool, but also with existing employees who are happy seeing these initiatives. We're not just in their words, we need someone like you to show up at an event. What was also very cool about this is it started with one specific ERG, but almost immediately the recruiting team was getting requests from other departments that wanted to participate, and they were willing to use their own budget. When does that ever happen with an HR initiative? As a result, this program has scaled across the company. So why does this work for employers? Well, it works because it fits across the recruiting funnel, whether it's at the very top, being able to reach the students and drive interest, whether it's around assessing skills, or whether it's about building the relationships that drive the conversion and retention. The impact is typically 40 to 80% cost savings. It is a very big range because every company is different in where they spend, but also that first year retention. We see organizations that use this approach, 98% plus first year retention, which is a pretty significant improvement relative to the, call it 50% overall first year turnover. Now I'm excited to share the funded program I mentioned. Through the various generous support of the Frederick DeLuca Foundation, you can use this program to recruit Barry students at no cost. You can try this. You can see the impact. The Barry students are paid for their work, and the foundation covers 100% of the cost. This is not a reimbursement. It is nothing you need to apply for. It is automatic. So what this means for you is you can reach students aligned to your goals at Barry. You can get the insights on their skills. You can keep the Barry students engaged after the events, or reach them even if you can't be on campus. What you also get, not just the funded projects, but you get access to the dashboard, the portal with all of the information that you can see to see the effectiveness. And it's super easy to get started. All you need to do is send us a job or internship description that you have. Like the example I showed you before, we'll create a project that aligns. You can also tell us about an ideal candidate that you're looking for, whether it's certain geographic ties or grad date or skill set. Let us know a goal or challenge you're having. Again, we're happy to work with you and create something that aligns to that very specific need. Or as I said, think about a small task you have on your own to-do list. Maybe you're going to be visiting Barry later this year, and you want to identify what are the key clubs on campus. Perfect project for a micro-intern. Or you need an article written, or you need research done. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So I dropped a link in the chat that you can use. There's also a QR code if that's easier for you. But I always say, please challenge us. Let us know the most difficult role you're having to fill, or a project or a role that you think no way this approach will work. We love to be challenged, and we're happy to sort of do the lift. I don't see any questions coming. I guess that means I did a reasonable job. Jeanette, anything I missed? Anything you want me to add?
But I think you covered it all, Jeff.
Wow.
Yeah, and if there are any additional questions, I'll make sure I reach out to you.
Yeah, and again, thank you so much. This is such an incredible program. What a great, great, great way to reach, engage, assess, and build relationships with the amazing Barry students who, again, have all of the skills, and this just really complements everything you're doing. So with
Definitely. We appreciate the collaboration, Jeffrey. Thank you so much.
thank you. And on that note, this concludes the webinar. As I said, we'll be sharing the recording and slides afterwards. And
Okay.
happy Friday Eve, everyone. Take care.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.